You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome to the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel, and we are so thankful that you are tuned in for another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. Like always, if this is your first time, we want to say welcome to our podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's conversation and that you hit that subscribe button so you could be notified every time we drop a new episode, and you can come back and week after week listen to our conversations, our episodes, and we just hope that you are blessed by each and every one of them. If you are a returning listener, we want to say welcome back and thank you for taking this journey with us. And we hope that today's conversation is no different than all the other episodes. And we pray that it encourages you and blesses you on this day. We are officially in the month of May.
Yeah. Crazy. They just flew by.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And in just a few weeks, right? My baby will be here. Gotta be specific nowadays, right? My baby will be here, right? And today I wanted to have a conversation with you because you are already a dad.
Two times.
And you are a dad of, right, two. And I think it's always good to just hear, and although like I see it, I know you long enough and know you in that context to see like how you are as a dad, right? But I think it's always good to just sit and have actual formal like conversations about it and talking about fatherhood or your experience as a dad and what it's like raising boys, right? As my baby is a boy. So I think it would be really good, right, to have that conversation. Are you down?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I jokingly said like two-time dad, this, that, and the third or whatever. I mean, it's not a joke, it's legit, it's real. I got two kids. But I am down for the conversation, but I can only speak from my experience and from like what we've been through and, our processes in, raising two boys. Who eventually will become men. So, my opinion on things may differ from the opinions of other people. And what worked for me may necessarily not work for everybody else as well. But, whatever I can help or give insight or just give an opinion on, I'm down for.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'm going to like interview you, right?
Why?
Okay. No, but I do have a question, right? Because then I'll talk about like
we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what were your, which you have to remember, I feel like, right? When you found out it was a boy, right? Like, what was the initial, like, reaction for you? Or, like, was there a fear, a concern, a worry? Or was it just like, yeah, that's what I wanted. Yes, let's go.
Okay, I think, excuse me. I think that it's like, it's a little, it's not tricky. But I think that I don't remember if I've told the story on the pod or if anybody remembers, but God had spoken to me actually first before my wife about our first child. Specifically, I had said it was going to be a boy. And actually, that word God spoke to me maybe like a month after she was technically pregnant, but we had no idea about it. And so I had already gone into, once we found out, I was like, all right, if God said it's a boy, so then I'm going to believe and trust it's a boy. Let's see if that lady was right. And let me stop imagine. And, we had a feeling. And sometimes, and I think you've shared with me, you and your wife had the same feeling also about, I think it's a boy. I really have a feeling it's a boy. So that was very exciting once we received the confirmation. I think that for me, my worries were just that I'm not a dude's dude. Like, I'm not like, what a typical guy, like sports and, like that rough, tough type of a dude is. So my fear was, will I be able to do like all the like manly guy stuff that I feel like is important for them to learn that I didn't pick up as a kid or weren't installed in me as a kid. And like that was like my worry. My fear and my worry was that I'm not like a lumberjack dad. I'm not a baseball head dad or like football coach type of a dad or whatever. Not that those things are the only things that are important for kids. But, in my mind, I felt like in order to raise a well-rounded boy, I needed to be able to tap into those areas along with all the artistic stuff that come easier to me. So I think that was I had a lot of fears, but that was maybe one of the fears I had.
Yeah. I am, like you said, I mean, for me, it was, I had a feeling, right? But at the same time, the feeling was, I think, in part because we only had a boy name picked out that we really wanted, right? And I love that name and just, everything about it, right? So I think then when, she got pregnant and we found out, I think I just immediately associated the baby with that name, right? So like I was calling the baby he the whole time, and but at the same time being very open and willing, like, and happy that if it was a girl, like, it's gonna be a girl and that's gonna be great, right? Like we weren't really like hoping like, oh, I hope it's a boy or I hope it's a girl. We were okay with whatever really God had for us. But deep down inside, I think I was relating to that baby more as if it were a boy, right? And in my head, that's what it was. When I thought of the baby, when I thought of what the baby was going to look like, a boy was always coming to mind. And, we did the blood test that, you can do. And it's called like a sneak peek test, right? And it said, that it was boy, but there's, always the chance that it's not 100% accurate. So we're like, okay, let's just wait till we get the official confirmation from the doctor and they do the whole anatomy scan and everything. And then, obviously there it was like, yep, this is a boy. And it was like everything, that we had felt before. Like it was just very, we were at peace about it, happy. For me, I was hoping, because it was like that's what I was envisioning the baby to be from the beginning. I was hoping that when we got the scan and everything that it was a boy, because it was going to be hard for me, I think. I don't know. And maybe it was it, but not to play it off, but just to now switch in my mind that it's a girl. Right. And we really we had a girl name, but it wasn't like a complete name that we really liked. We were still like working on the middle name, but for the boy, we had everything set and it was great. And so it was just in my mind, I was like, man, how am I going to like transition from, thinking that the baby was a boy to now it being a girl? Like, how is that going to work? Right. And I'm sure if that happened, it would have been fine anyway, but we were very excited when, we found out. I think for me, I think at the stage of hearing that it was a boy, I think I felt more, the fears and worries, I think came a little later for me than initially. I think initially I felt more like I'm going to have almost like a mini me, right? Like someone that I can share things with and someone that I can, almost like what you said, like share similar interests with and teach them things. And, I started immediately thinking like what I did as a child with like Legos or building blocks and all those things, like how I really enjoyed that. Even like, video games, how that to me when I was a kid, I played video games a lot. It kind of like faded off as I grew older. But, playing with your boys lately as well has also been something that has been building that little bit of excitement, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be able to play this, with my boy. But then obviously, like you said, the fears and worries are there, right? Like, you're responsible for molding this child and creating this child a heart for God, right? A heart for people. You're instilling in them like how to treat people, how to treat girls and women, right? Like it's all of that you're responsible for, and have to like really cultivate that. And that's where it can be overwhelming. I think a big question that everyone is asking me now, being that in just like 5-6 weeks, maybe even before, like, we don't know, right? The baby will be here. Everyone's starting to ask you like, are you nervous? Are the nerves settling in? And it's weird because I'm not. Like,
that's fine.
I'm not nervous. You know what I mean?
Excited.
It's excited. I'm very excited. But I think it's not nerves that's there. I can't really describe it. Maybe a therapist would be able to do that. No, I think it's not nerves, what you mean. But it's like this, almost like a weight, right? Of, the responsibility of what it is. So I'm not nervous about, like, am I going to be able to do this? It's more of like, okay, how am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to make sure that they, you know what I mean? Even just the idea of like growing up in church as a Christian, like you worry, like, I have to instill that within him from very young, whether it is like how to pray and like Bible stories and worship and music and all of those things, like, and luckily we have like a kids ministry in our church and all of that. So like that will be a part of him as well. But it's just making sure, again, that all of that kind of comes natural, right? And like they're just, brought up in that, so it becomes easier as they grow to just, fully like let that grow and flourish. But definitely more excited than nervous. And I think that, again, I don't know, I feel like people expect the dad, right, first time dad, to be a little more nervous, and maybe it's there underlying, and it'll really emerge in a few weeks, right, as the time gets closer. Because I feel like as each week gets closer and as each week passes, it becomes more real. So like when we were putting his nursery together, that was like, whoa. When we had the baby shower, it was like, okay, this is happening. When we had the scans where it's like, okay, now you got to come every week, which is what it is now. It's almost like, okay, yeah, this is getting real. It's happening, but like I said, it's more excitement than nerves.
Yeah. And I think that you specifically, I think that it helps when you grew up in a household. Your dad is great. You have an awesome relationship with your dad. You still have a relationship that's awesome with your dad as well. So, you have a foundation that's really helpful in that. And I think that, not that is the key to all of it, but it definitely helps because you have someone to bounce back to. You have someone's the way that they raised you to be like, oh yeah, that was really good. He was always there. You speak about the letters that your dad would do for you every school year. Like, there's a lot of good things that you have to pick up on. That then you decide whether or not that's stuff that you want to implement for your child moving forward as well. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I had to work through, which is the idea of I didn't come with as much tools into the picture, but there comes a point in the walk of parenthood that you have to make the conscious decision to be like, you know what, I'm going to make decisions that I am trying my best or believe that is the best decisions for my kids. And sometimes you have people that would disagree with you and be like, no, don't do it that way, or don't do this, or you have the people that are going to give you 43 different opinions on stuff that are always going to be like on top of you, but you have to take a stand and be like, I got it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to work it out. Obviously, always welcome to advice from people that you want to take advice from, but there also comes a point where it's like, it's our kid. We're setting the rules, we're setting the boundaries, we're setting the parameters, and you have to trust, like you have to tell the public, you have to trust that we are going to be able to do it. Yeah. Because a lot of times people just, a lot of people do it with good heart, like trying to like jump in and trying to help and stuff like that. But there's other times it's like, well, let us go through the experience. Let us figure it out. Let us, do what we got to do. And make it work. And I think that that's part of the journey that's exciting, which is that you will find yourself in moments and situations like, nobody told me that something like this would happen, or nobody said that this is how this was feel like, or this is what this is gonna sound like, but you navigate those moments and those experiences to the best of your ability, and then that's what strengthens you as a dad.
Yeah. Was there a moment where you were like extremely overwhelmed and feeling like you didn't know if you could do it?
No. I think that there are moments that you do get overwhelmed, yes. And I think that especially like the early stages when the kid doesn't sleep at night, those are the ones, that get very, it's very easy for you to get frustrated. Yeah. You're sleep deprived, your wife is sleep deprived, the kid is sleep deprived. And I always say it that the baby stage is the cutest. Cutest stage is the stage I like the least because of the fact that you can't communicate and find out like, what is it? Are you gassy? Do you need to use the restroom? Are you cold? Are you hot? Like, are you hungry? Like, they can't communicate with you in words exactly what it is that they need. So then you're like there, like trying everything in the world to figure it out to soothe them. So though the baby stage is cute, it's my least favorite part of the growing up stage, just because of that, because you want to be able to help your kid, and you got to like go through all the emotions to figure out what the situation is, but obviously you get overwhelmed and stuff like that, but I think that I also entered fatherhood with the understanding that I don't know everything, but I am excited to make it work, because it was something that I was from before having kids. I was like, when I become a dad, I'm going to give it 100. I'm going to give it 100, and I'm going to do the best that I can do to the best of my ability. So when the opportunity came up, it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm ready to walk away, or this is too much, I need to go do this. And no, it was kind of like, no, I'm going to dive in head first. Yes, There are times where sometimes you get, there's a term that's being used a lot lately, which is overstimulated. There are times you will get overstimulated. There's just too much going on or whatever, and you need to go use the bathroom for a good 10 minutes or something. You know, like you need to, for your own mental health, you do need to take little moments here and there. And I think that's something that you have to be very conscious about, or anybody, parent, mom, dad, or whoever, have to be conscious about, is about vocalizing when you need a break. You need a moment. Like, you know, like I've been all day with the kid and, you know, it's beautiful. I love my child, but I need 5 minutes. I need to go take a walk because you need to like get your mind off. And Bluey, which is a cartoon for kids that you're going to dive into once the baby starts watching cartoons or whatever, has a great episode about that, which is the mom needs 5 minutes. The kids don't understand what that means, that the mom needs 5 minutes. But as a parent watching the cartoon, you're like, I get her. I get Chili. Her name is Chili. You're like, I get Chili. She really needed those 5 minutes. And the kids are like trying to knock on the door, and the dad is trying to get them away from the door and all this stuff or whatever. But, you know, it's about communicating and effective teamwork in those moments. So, yeah, answer the question. Did I get overwhelmed or something like that? In essence of like the big like overwhelm? No. Do you have moments of feeling overwhelmed? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love like everything that you were saying, and I've told you this before and we've talked about it, but the idea that, you know, you don't have to necessarily grow up in a 2-parent home or with great relationship with your parents or great parents in order for you to be a great parent. Yeah. Right. And I think it's a choice that you have to make. And the same thing can be applied to so many different things outside of parenting. Right. You didn't see love growing up. You didn't see a good example of what a marriage was. You can make the choice, right, to say that's not going to be my story. Right. And now you have to put in the work. You have to find the resources. You may have to research. You may have to ask people. You may have to, you know, take that step and go out of what you do normally to find answers or find help, but you have to be willing to do that in order to break that, you know, even if it's like that generational cycle, right? Or breaking that pattern that seems to be, you know, within your family. Because I know of individuals, right, who grew up with horrible parents and relationships with their parents and just unhealthy homes, and it seems like they didn't learn from that experience, and they just carry that on now with their children. And it seems like it's a cycle, right? And with some of these individuals, it really is sad and unfortunate when you see like, I heard that's how you were raised, and I heard that's how you were brought up, and you really didn't like it, and you struggled, and now you're doing that with your children. So you have to make the decision to really stand up and say, that's not going to happen with me, right? Like that stops with me. I'm breaking that. But it takes more than just declaring it. You may have to, like I said, do some research. You may have to speak to someone. You may need to get help in order to really ensure that that doesn't happen with your family. Because then I know of individuals who grew up in homes that were, you know, unstable, inconsistent, unhealthy, and they made the decision that stops here. I'm not bringing this into my home, right? And then you have the other side where it's people who grew up in loving homes and for some reason
they go left,
right? So, you know, it's something that you can never really assume just because someone grew up in a beautiful home that they're going to be that way, right? Or they saw a beautiful marriage that they're going to be that way when they're married, right? It really is at the end of the day a choice you have to make to either continue that and be better, right? Or continue the unhealthy relationships and communication and forms of living that it's like that needs to break.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, that actually, excuse me.
He did a lot of talking. We're filming on a different day than normal, right? It's Sunday, and you just were talking for about an hour in Bible class.
Yeah, so my voice is a little shot. But what I was going to say was that a lot of that actually starts before you have kids. Actually starts before you even get married, and, you know, understanding certain things about yourself, which is like things that you don't want to bring to certain chapters in your life. And it's like, you know, for me, I've been praying about my kids before I even got married. Yeah. You know, that was something that was very like, I knew I was going to have kids. I knew I was going to have a family. But I also knew my life, my experience, what I came up with, which was like, all right, Lord, these are things that I don't want to be prevalent in my kids' life. And, you know, you have to do those things. You have to do the legwork beforehand. Obviously, if you didn't think about it and then now this is the first time you're hearing it and you got a 12-year-old, there's still time.
Yeah.
You can still do these things. And I would do things like, right now, I looked it up in my email, when we decided on the name of our first kid, whose name means "for God is gracious and has shown favor." On my desk at work, I had written his name, and I put all the attributes or all the characteristics I wanted for my son to have when he grew up. So I had put, obviously, handsome, like his dad. No, stop. Talented, man of God, humble, courageous, caring, funny, responsible, respectful, outspoken, dedicated, hard worker, anointed, servant, sensitive to the voice of God, leader, smart, sweet. Like all these attributes are around his name, and these are the things that I would pray for my kid. Before he was even born, which is like, Lord, these are help him be like this, help him, have these characteristics, help him be, but it's also my responsibility as the dad who has declared these things over his life to make sure that I help him in those areas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And help cultivate those things. You want him to be sweet, so then you have to demonstrate sweetness. You want him to be strong and courageous, you have to demonstrate what it looks like to be strong and courageous as well. And I think like these are the things that you do as a parent, and also someone who is a servant of God, who believes in declaration and the power of your tongue, which is to speak these things over your kids, over your child's life, and also make sure they put them into action. It was funny because I haven't looked at this list since after he was born. It's been almost 7 years, but I had it in my email, and it's really funny to like look at it now and be like, oh, okay, I see those things in him. I see him being funny. He's very respectful. He can be outspoken. I see all those things. He's a servant. He loves to help as well. Sweet. Very sweet. So I think it's cool to then have moments like this and then look back and be like, oh, snap. Like, he has it.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that as the time gets closer, right? Because you pray, like I've prayed, over this child and everything. And just, like you said, praying like good things and wanting and trusting God, like, but I think my pessimist side, right, at times would be the individual like I'm praying like, Lord, when he goes through moments where he's doubting you, like I'm like, like I'm going that path too, like when
absolutely.
someone really upsets him and hurts him and whatever, like allow him to really cling to you and allow him to really and it's funny because I look at even just situations in the last year, let's say, that I've been through, right? And as they like, little things in life continue, right? When something comes up unexpectedly, like a car issue, and you have to pay all this money to fix something in your car, and you may not necessarily have it, or you may not necessarily have it all, or you were saving that money for something else, and it can get frustrating. It's like immediately I'm like, Lord, allow baby boy, right, when he is going through a time where something comes out of left field and he's frustrated and it really discourages him, allow him to find like refuge in you and allow him to find encouragement in someone, even if it's me and someone else, right, where it's like as little things happen, if I'm extremely overwhelmed with just all these different things, right, it's like, Lord, when he gets overwhelmed, really be that, right? So it's just funny because I look at it like I'm going through these things, or these are things I experience on a daily, and it's like you are bringing someone else into the world that's going to be experiencing frustration and discouragement and sadness and betrayal and all of these things. And as much as you want to protect and as much as you want to put them in a bubble and protect them and keep them safe from people and situations and heartbreak and all these different things, they are going to go through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And, my prayer is that when they travel through those moments and when they go through those moments, that they remember who God is, right? And they remember, who God created them to be, and they have that to always lean on where, even looking at me as that example, I oftentimes think of my dad when he was in ministry, right? Or he still is in ministry, but as I was growing up and the hardships and different things that he went through, right? How he never gave up. Yeah. So it's almost like for me, there are moments where I go back to that and I'm like, this is something my dad went through. This is very similar to this. And he's an example of not giving up, how then my son would look at that, right? And be like, I have to be like him. I can't give up, right? And allowing myself to be that example for him. And that's one of the things where I think it can also be challenging, the level of accountability children bring you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, you can't be telling them to be respectful to people, and then every 5 minutes you're talking about somebody and telling them off, and venting and complaining about how they are and how messed up they are and all this stuff, because your child will be like, that's not nice. You shouldn't say things like that.
They'll check you real quick.
And it's like, I want to be the example. If I'm saying something, let them hear that in my everyday speech. Let them see me, right? If I'm telling them they have to pray, it's like, may they see me do that, right? Mm-hmm. May I model that for them. And I think at times that can be the challenge, where it's like you have this new level of accountability where it's like there are not only there are people watching you, you have your mini you, right?
Yeah, no,
someone that came from you watching you, right? And they are looking at you, and you are that example of who Jesus is, who God is, what love is, what peace is, what trust is, what having faith is, right? So I just think about that, where now I can be in the car frustrated at something and, calling out to God and telling God something. I may not be, be able to do that in front of my kid and be like, Lord, where are you? I thought you were, right? Imagine we all have those moments hitting the steering wheel, or whatever. But it's like, you may not be able to do that in that way, right? So it's like a new level of accountability, where at the same time, I think that also teaches you, right, how to tap into other sources when you are frustrated. It's like, no, I really do need to trust God.
No, absolutely. And I think that, as your kid gets older, you'll also find that your prayers change for them. Like the things that you want would change for them, because no matter how much you want your kid to be a certain type of way, they're their own personality. Yeah. They're their own individual person. And with that comes many great attributes, but also comes the flaws that come with humanness as well. And, you are never as prepared as you feel like you should be for any stage in parenthood. But your job is just to be present. So when the shift change, when there's changes that happen, when there's new obstacles that they encounter, one of the things that I wish I could be, you can't be present with your kid everywhere. They go to schools, they go to after schools, or they go to programs and stuff like that, or whatever. And there's a lot of things that I talk to my kid every day. They tell me about their day. What they did in the morning. I get all the details. I got all the scoop. I know who's doing what in school and all that stuff or whatever. But a lot of it really is because I'm just trying to understand how he's navigating in these social circles. Because I find that to be important. Is your kid the kid that is always playing alone? Is your kid the kid who is always following groups of people, but they're never being called to those groups? Is your kid the class clown? Is your kid or whatever? You can't be in class to know what's happening unless the teacher's writing you notes like, hey, your kid is a talkative one, or whatever. And you get an idea of what personality type or what role your kid plays in these environments by asking them those questions, asking them what are they doing, what are they playing, who are their go-to people, and all that other stuff. And then little by little, you'll pick up on things, on little frustrations that they have, things that they don't like that happen in school, and those are things that you start adding to your list of, okay, I got to pray for this, I got to pray for that, or whatever. And then you also have to converse with them and be like, hey, Bubby, you have to be a little bit stronger in that area. If somebody does something you don't like, use your strong voice, or do this or that. It gets very challenging, because I think as a kid who grew up in the hood with the mom that I had, I'm ready to go up in that school and start kicking people. I know. But you can't, you can't, and you have to teach them to fend for themselves as well. So I think that it's just fun. It's very stressful. Your safety of your kid is number one priority. At first it's funny because I heard somebody refer to babies or toddlers as a human you're trying to take care of that's constantly trying to kill themselves. They're jumping off of stuff, right. They're jumping in front of things. And it's gosh. Then there comes a point where they understand danger a little bit better. But then now you're trying to protect them from the dangers of the world. Which then those are other tough conversations and stuff. So with each age or each group, when they go from babies to toddlers to school age kids or whatever, there come new challenges. You just got to tackle them one by one. Because I think the idea of parenthood or fatherhood is a conversation that we could do a series on for 6 months, because there's so much things that you can talk about specifically for each thing. I think that on the early stages, when it comes to being a newborn's dad. It's really about just being present, taking advantage of the moments, checking in with your wife, making sure that you guys are working as a team, just taking advantage of all the little precious moments, because you blink and they're talking, they're walking, they're jumping, they're, with friends.
Have you ever heard of that expression? I think it's the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes, and it's true.
Or I don't know if it's that the days are slow and the years are fast, something like that.
Whatever it is, it's true.
Right. The idea that the days feel like forever, right?
Yeah,
especially when you're in it, whether it's a newborn stage or the toddler stage. I told somebody the other day, I was like I'm really excited for the stage when they're like a toddler, like 2, because like they're able to stand, they're able to run a little bit, they're able to they're a little bigger. And that person looked at me like, a toddler? Really? The terrible 2s? Like you're excited for that? But I don't know. It's just something that I look forward to, like that age where they're a little bit bigger, they can sit up on their own, they can stand, they can all of that. And I think that those days, right, when maybe they're in that stage where they're exploring and moving and going and doing all, crawling everywhere, jumping off of things, whatever, the days could feel very long, right? But then in essence, when you look back and you realize your kid's about to graduate high school, right, or your kid is, going to college and all of that, I think that's where you feel like, oh snap, time really did go by fast.
Yeah, and I think that those are one of the things that me and my wife are very conscious of, because you go from a stage where your kids don't talk, and then you're like, oh, I can't wait for them to talk. I want to hear their voice. I want to whatever. And then they start talking and they never stop, right? But, there's something that I'm always very conscious of, which is like, especially my oldest, he likes to talk. He has a lot of questions. He likes to break down stuff. And I think that humanly, you kind of get frustrated sometimes where you're kind of like, all right, child, that's enough. We've been talking about this subject for 45 minutes. But then I remember, like, I go back to me as a kid not having someone to talk to, and then that's why I'm like, all right, it's okay, just keep talking to him, keep being someone who you can bounce off of, because as they get older, they may find other people to talk to and they no longer want to talk to you, right? Or they may, you get frustrated one time and you're like, yeah, deja de estar hablando, tú hablas tanto, whatever, and that marks them. They're never coming back to talk to you ever again. So as a parent, you have to be conscious of those little things, where sometimes he's been talking about Roblox and all these characters for 45 minutes and talking to you about this, or he's talking about his new interest. Like, he went through this moment where sharks were his thing, and he was talking about all the different type of sharks and about shark teeth and all this stuff. You have to engage in those moments. It's very important, because you want to establish that relationship where your kids can come to you for anything. And no matter if you're frustrated, no matter if you're in the middle of something, sometimes you have to be like, hey, Bobby, we're going to give me 5 minutes and then we'll come back. Make sure you go back. And you're like, okay, what were you telling me about the sharks or about the this or whatever? Because it is easy to get frustrated because you're not only taking care of that kid. You're taking care of that kid and you're cooking or you're cleaning or you have work or you have this or you have that. So there's a lot of things that you have to be conscious about that sometimes it's very easy for you to forget. And then, 20 years, 5 years from now, you're wondering, why doesn't my kid talk to me about his interests? Well, it goes back to that time when he was 7 and you told him to stop talking. He talks too much. You can't do those things.
Have you ever had a moment we had to apologize to one of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I hear this often where it's like, parents should never apologize to their kids, never be, whatever. But then there are those that are like, will apologize. Like, I remember like my dad and my mom, like, saying sorry over certain things. If, they were frustrated or going through something and they came off a certain way or did something or misunderstood what I was saying and the scenario and the story. Right. And it's funny, but I never took it as, yes, I won and I beat and like that, like negative attitude. It was more like, wow, like they actually said sorry.
Yeah, there's been times where I've maybe assumed the situation. Sorry. It almost sounded like I was crying.
We're tapping into some,
No,
emotions.
No. They're like where I've assumed something. Like maybe him and his brother are like playing, and then I'm assuming he's the one that's, antagonizing the other. Or, like unfortunately, one of my character flaws is that sometimes I just like say stuff without thinking or like getting everything, so there's been times where I've like assumed something and then he's like, nope, that's not what it was something else or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I that was my fault. I shouldn't have said that or whatever. Or sometimes we're like roughhousing and we're like playing and we're like wrestling and I'm like throwing him against we have the nugget and like the nugget and then throw him a little too hard and he lands on his knee. Then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, come here. I'm not like, oh, tough it up. That's good for you. They have moments that and I think you will have moments as you get older where, sometimes you think a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, better. 9 times out of 10, you are 100% right. But there is that one chance that will happen where you either assume something or you said something in frustration or you didn't even let them finish explaining what it was that they were explaining and you like jumped to something. And it's kind of like you have to take a moment and be like, I apologize. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think, I think a lot of parenting styles today, there's so many different types and so many different views on parenting that you can literally, like you said, do a 6-month series, but there are podcasts that are simply on just parenting, right? And I think that I love like researching and seeing what other people are doing and tapping into like what my parents did and like raising me and my brother. But like you said, I think at the end of the day, this is a journey you have to go on, right? It's a journey that will be unique to you and your situation and, how you and your wife have decided or you and your husband have decided to raise your kid, you know? And like I said, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to it so much. And one thing that I do, I hear this a lot and I see it a lot, right? And we've spoken about it before, is the idea of the importance of fatherhood, right? And I don't want to say lack, but I guess you can say the differences, right? Where I feel like there's so many, let's say, resources on motherhood, right? How to be a mom or like mom speaking about raising kids and all of that. And even within the Christian community, right? There's a lot of that. When you go to kind of research about fatherhood and fathers, it's way less, right? Or the resources are like women talking about the importance of fathers and like within research and studies that they've done, right? So I think it's super important that, and my prayer is that, there would be more, I guess, fathers that, are willing to speak out and encourage other fathers and, are doing it the right way and have learned from their mistakes and are willing to talk about it and share about it. Because I really do think that we need fathers, right? And we need present fathers and we need fathers who are willing to be there for their children, communicate with them, be strong for their children, be emotional with them, right? Teach them. And I think that, yes, there are mothers out there and single moms that are killing it and crushing it and doing, the job of both. And God has blessed them with that ability and that grace and just job to be able to do that, right? Yeah. But I do think if there is a father present, that father needs to step up, right? Yeah. Even in a Christian household, right? The mom should not be the only one, in my opinion, right? Doing all the work as far as raising the kid to be God-fearing and loving God and coming to church and what worship is, what prayer is. The dad should also be doing that as well, right? So my prayer is that, as just the years keep going, right, that through the means of technology, social media, because that's really what it comes through, right? That we would see just more fathers step up, right? And be willing to speak about it. Yeah. Because I think a lot of it too isn't that there aren't good fathers out there. I think that there just aren't fathers who, I guess, are comfortable enough or secure enough to actually talk about it, right? So let me tell you about a time I messed up and failed in parenting and how I fixed it or what I did. Or let me tell you about, like, the great things about being a dad, right? Where it's like, a lot of times it's easier, like I said, for you to find about, mothering and how to be a mother and tips and all these things. When it comes to fatherhood, the resources are so scarce.
Yeah, and I also think that they're not being asked the questions. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like it's very easy to, set up a core group, or it's very easy to set up a conference or whatever, and it'd be women and moms and everybody sharing their things, but no one's creating a space for dads to talk about their experience as well. Yes, they're I think statistically you could say that there are more, moms than dads that are present in childbearing, rearing and all that other stuff, but we also have dads that they're just not given that platform, and I think it'll be kind of weird for me to just go live on like Instagram or TikTok, like, hey, I'm gonna give you 3 tips. Some people do it, you have the pages that do it, but I think that usually characteristically men would be like, well, if you ask me, I'll tell you, but maybe you don't ask me.
And also not just through technology or social media, but also just having conversations with people, like you said. Sometimes we wait for people to ask us. It's like, how about you just step up and do it, right? And initiate that conversation and talk to them about it, and I think that the more, it's like anything, the more you feel like you have community, the more you feel like you have people that understand and that can relate and that have been through it and that have gone through it and can talk to you about it. Do this, do that. I wouldn't do that. I went through something similar and this happened, right? Just that encouragement sometimes is very important, right? And like you said, I think it's something that statistically it doesn't work for us all the time, right? But I think that it's not an excuse, right?
No, not at all.
There are podcasts out there. There are organizations and people and dads and fatherhood and community groups, I'm sure, that are out there, right? We just, I think, need to see it more, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in like our Hispanic Latino community. I think it's important too that we see that, right?
Listen, like we said before, there's a conversation that can go on for episodes and episodes. And I'm sure we'll be having another episode talking about something fatherhood related as well. But at the end of the day, as always, our objective is to just get the conversation going, get the conversation started. So if you're a spouse who just wants to have the conversation with your husband, throw on this podcast. If you're a kid that wants to have a conversation with your dad, throw on this podcast. Or if you're someone who is planning on having kids, these are little things that you guys should be talking about, should be praying about, should be doing in order to like set yourself up for success, because there will be struggles, there will be moments of frustration, but the importance really is just getting through all of that to enjoy all the good stuff.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for all the tips.
I gave like 2. I gave like 2 tips.
And we hope that you were encouraged and blessed by today's conversation. In a few weeks, Mother's Day is coming up, and then in June it'll be Father's Day. There's a lot of exciting things coming up, and we hope that you just come back week after week to check out what we have to share, what we have to talk about, and definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram at God Life Culture Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube as well and check out our visuals there. God Life Culture Podcast. Subscribe so you can get notified every time we drop a new episode, and you can start your week with us, your morning, go home with us, right? However you listen, you can definitely be a part of what we are doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you once again for tuning into the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. That's
God Life Culture.
Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.